Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches, where today I'm going to be talking about a trio of 8 themed films from Hollywood's lower echelon production houses in the 1930s and 40s. Perhaps tying into a similar zeitgeist in pulp fiction magazines of that period, Gorillas and Other Big Apes were frequent features of low budget fare in this period. The first movie is The Monster Walks from 1932, which begins with the hoariest of cliches, a gathering on a dark and stormy night for the reading of a dead man's will. It's not much of a gathering, though, other than the lawyer who is there to read the will. There's the dead man's 2 servants, his invalid brother, and his daughter, who brings along her fiance and their chauffeur, a painfully racist and unfunny comedic, quote unquote, African American character. Also in the house, a gorilla the dead man kept for experiments of some kind. When the will is read, the daughter gets almost all of the estate and wealth, but she quickly ends up targeted for death. The only thing she sees of her attacker is a large, hairy hand. It can't be that the gorilla is attacking her without human instruction, though. Revealing who is behind the murderous attack is the focus of the film's rather creaky script. The second film offers the even more prosaic title, The Gorilla. Apparently in 1939, it is the third film to use that name. I mean, I did say they loved a gorilla back then. The twist here, though, is that the titular critter is not an actual ape at all, but a nefarious serial killer who announces his planned victims in advance. The movie begins with another such threat being delivered. Walter Stevens, a businessman, is the target. Despite the pleas of his niece, Stevens declines to inform the police. His argument is that doing so didn't help the previous victim, and instead he hires 3 detectives to protect him. Given how incompetent they quickly show themselves to be, you might start to wonder if Stevens actually wants to die, or maybe, just maybe, there's more to the situation than meets the eye. Naturally, in one of those only in Hollywood coincidences, a real gorilla also escapes its pen and ends up at Stevens's house on the same night as the murderer. Shenanigans, as they say, ensue. And then last, we have the 1940 offering The Ape. In this film, a mistreated and brutalized circus gorilla escapes from captivity. Given the terrible treatment it suffered, it is violently aggressive towards the humans it encounters. It kills several people, a series of events that an unscrupulous local physician uses to the advantage of his nefarious and unethical research. The ape's violent attacks are so useful to him, in fact, that when the ape dies, he covers it up, skins the animal, and begins to conduct his own murders in his new bestial guise. So, The Monster Walks and The Ape were produced by so called Poverty Row Studios, production companies with much smaller budgets and resources than the major studios, who survived in the industry by churning out vast numbers of cheaply produced B pictures intending to support the main feature presentation. The Gorilla, meanwhile, comes from 20th Century Fox, which makes it technically a major studio release, but it was definitely budgeted as a B feature, with a reported financing roughly one-eighth that of the headline Fox features, such as Stanley and Livingston, which was released in the same year. Now, in the final analysis, none of these movies are terribly good, but each has at least one notable characteristic, so why don't I tell you about those? The Monster Walks clocks in at a mere 60 minutes long, but it feels a lot longer than that. And a big part of the problem is that as a murder mystery, it suffers from a severe lack of suspects. There are essentially only 3 of them. There's the dead man's brother, who also has the most obvious motive. If the daughter dies, he gets the estate. Second is the housekeeper, and third, there's her son, both of whom received only token amounts in the will. While there are a handful of other characters, none stand to profit from murdering the daughter. Perhaps a smarter film could have believably given the fiance a secret agenda, but that's a task well beyond this script. Instead, it just offers up 3 possible suspects, has a couple of weakly staged attack scenes, and then flat out just has the characters explain the murderous plan. It's also very, very lazy. The most entertaining thing about the film, in fact, is the movie's desperate attempts to claim that the animal in the house is a gorilla. It's clearly a chimpanzee. This is, of course, a much smaller animal than a gorilla. In fact, the movie desperately and wholly unsuccessfully attempts to conceal by never showing the animal on screen at the same time as any of the human cast because it would be transparently obvious it's actually much smaller than them rather than much larger. Now, The Gorilla stars the Ritz brothers. They were a trio of real life brothers who performed extensively on stage from 1925 and who moved to film in 1934. Boisterous comedians and impressionists who were also capable of carrying a song and dance routine, the brothers featured in a series of successful musical comedies over the rest of the 30s until things went awry, pretty much starting with this film. The root of the problem seems to have been that Fox head honcho Daryl F. Zanuck viewed only one of the brothers as a real star and considered the other two to be excess baggage. When the chosen brother brusquely shot down Zanuk's attempt to coax him into a solo career, Zanuck forced the trio to make this clearly second rate film. The Rich brothers complained about the low quality of the script and actually staged a highly publicized walkout. But Zanuck forced the completion of the film regardless, and the Ritzes ended their relationship with Fox after its completion. They would move on to a new studio, but find themselves relegated to B picture status forever after. Now, the Rich brothers were right to complain about the film script. It's a comedy whodunit that utterly fails to be funny and simply recycles the same handful of jokes over and over and over again in its 65-minute runtime. The mystery element, meanwhile, was slightly better. It actually had one more twist than I expected. But by the time it was revealed, I really ceased to care. The final film of the trio, The Ape, is the best of the three by some measure, which is not saying much, I have to admit. Importantly, this film has a mostly solid cast, which was in no way guaranteed in low budget fare of this era, and I admire the audacity of making the killer is actually a man wearing a gorilla suit a plot point, thereby justifying why your so called gorilla is clearly a man in a gorilla suit. Obviously, the costs and challenges of working with real gorillas were far outside the resources of lower tier studios and production teams. That's why the Monster Walk tries to pass off a chimpanzee as its much larger cousin. More often than that approach, though, the man in the suit approach was used instead. This is, in fact, so common that playing a gorilla actually became a significant part of some people's careers. Ray Crash Corrigan, who is the man in the suit in The Ape, also played a gorilla in more than 20 other pictures over a career that spanned both the 1930s and 40s. Now, if you were to watch any of these three films, make it The Ape. But honestly, I think you'd be better off skipping them all and just firing up that wonderful 1933 classic King Kong. It's a much bigger ape and a much better movie. Next time, Tanya Sriracho's television drama series Vida, which ran for 3 seasons from 2018 to 2020. I think the show is truly excellent, but it also absolutely won't be for everybody. And I'll try to explain how both of those things are true next time. But that is next time. Until then, thanks for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it.